Hi everyone and welcome to episode 30 of the Australian Rock Show. My name is Dennis Gray from the Rockin' and Rollin' Gray Brothers. Today is Sunday the 2nd of August 2015 when this show is being recorded. We have a very special show lined up. However, let me preface today's interview with a couple of interesting Australian rock and roll facts. Aside from recording with AC/DC and the Marcus Hook Roll Band, Angus Young has only ever guested on one other album, Ray Arnott's 1979 release, Rude Dudes. Bon Scott's last ever live performance on Australian soil was an impromptu set at Cremorne's Strata Inn. The drummer, Ray Arnott. In an interview exclusive to the Australian Rock Show, Ray talks in great detail to my brother Colin about his life in rock and roll, his time with Albert Productions, his memories of Bon Scott, working with Vanda and Young, and much, much more. From the Southtown moods with Glen Wheatley in the mid-60s, to Cam Pact, Company Caine, Spectrum, to Mighty Kong with Ross Wilson, the Dingoes, to replacing Steve Prestwich in Cold Chisel and recording with Jimmy Barnes. Ray's rock and roll resume reads like a who's who of Australian rock and roll, and if anyone ever had a book in them about a life in rock and roll, it's Ray. Before we get to the interview, which was recorded yesterday, let's get in the mood with a tune. From 1979's Rude Dudes album, here is Ray Arnott with On the Run. Ray, welcome to the Australian Rock Show. Now, Ray Arnott may not be a name that's overly familiar to many, yet many people would certainly be aware of the bands you've played in. Spectrum, Company Caine, Mighty Kong, stints in the Dingoes and famously Cold Chisel. Also Flash in the Pan, Cheetah, Jimmy Barnes and your own band, the Ray Arnott Group, for many years. So, a long time, isn't it? 50 years in rock and roll. It's been quite a rock and roll resume that you have. When you look back at that time, mate, what memories stand out as the fondest for you?
There's an awful lot that stand out. But the one that I think comes to mind more than anything else is the Stevie Wright show at the Opera House.
The Rocktober thing, yeah?
Yeah, the Rocktober show. For me, it was sort of very, very special because it was with some great artists and great acts and involved with great people. And it was, as a lot of people talk about the Alberts family thing, there was so much love on the stage and everybody wanted Stevie to sort of kick a goal, and he certainly did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so for me, and then to see it it's on the YouTube and all that sort of stuff, so that even brings back a better flash.
Yeah, I mean, he was certainly on fire on that day, and you can see the energy come through on that clip, yeah.
Yeah, I played good. I thought I did anyway.
Well, the whole band did, actually. You're right.
Oh,
the whole
band
was gelling very well. With the Hammond sisters there as well, and Ronnie Peel, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, look, we'll go right back to the beginning, if I may. Let's look at some of your formative years. How old were you when you started drumming, and I guess did you grow up in a musical family?
Yeah, well, I guess the first time I started drumming was on a stool in the kitchen with a couple of coat hangers.
Okay.
Banging along with stuff on the radio, I think, 6.5 Special and all those sort of things in England. And
okay.
Played trumpet a little bit at school and sort of that sort of stuff, but really got into drumming more so when I migrated to Australia with my dad. My dad was a musician, so yeah, musical family, and I started playing gigs with him.
Okay, and that was in Melbourne. He migrated to Melbourne. Is that right?
No, Brisbane. Yeah,
Brisbane. Okay.
Yeah, first went to the Brisbane migrant hostel there at Kangaroo Point. And stayed there for a few weeks. Then moved into a flat. And Dad started doing gigs, and I started sort of playing a little bit more on drums. He bought me a kit for my birthday, I think, and it sort of kicked on from there.
And I guess as a drummer, though, it no doubt, I guess, can come as a surprise to some people, or came as a surprise to some people in the mid-'70s when you began to sing lead vocals with your own bands. But in fact, you'd been singing lead vocals as far back as the mid-'60s, hadn't you?
Yeah. Well, I think I wanted to be a singer before I was a drummer, because before I was banging on the stool, I think I was singing into a candlestick holder, that sort of thing. So the drums seemed to be a second thing. But yeah, Southtown Moods was the first one with Wheatley, and we used to do some blues gigs and stuff around the time with the Purple Hearts and all those sort of guys, Lobby Lloyd, Mick Adley, and the crew.
Yeah, your influences, was that the British invasion stuff?
Sorry,
The British invasion material, was that the stuff that influenced you? I had read that James Brown and Chuck Berry were your two main influences.
Yeah, for performance and stuff like that. But I was always caught up, like every young person at that age, with the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, you know, which is just an extension of R&B. As I further got into music, I started to realise that most of the sources of the things I was listening to were coming from rhythm and blues artists, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when did you move? You moved from Brisbane to Melbourne, is that correct?
Yeah. We the Chelsea set we started working for Ivan Damon. He used to have all the acts in those days.
Yep.
And we became under his sort of management and moved down to Melbourne and started doing gigs for him down in the Bowl and all the other big ones that were around at the time. I think there was Mike Ferber and Tony Woolsey, all sorts of people. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess that period between Southtown Moods and Cam Pact, what were you? Was that you went from Southtown Moods to Cam Pact? Is that correct?
No, so from the Chelsea set, I went to the Browns.
That's okay. Yep.
Yeah, which was with Les Stackpole and Ronnie Peel.
Yes. Yep.
And that's where Les Stackpole was a great guitar player. He taught me how to play a 12-bar blues. And taught me a few Chuck Berry licks. Yeah. And that later came to help me with sort of writing songs, you know, sort of getting into music. And that sort of didn't turn into me writing songs for a long time, but I had that basic 12-bar blues thing that I could play, and that's all I could play.
Okay.
Yeah, that was good. But the Browns were a good band. We played around for quite a few years, and we used to back a lot of acts: Olivia Newton-John, Ronnie Burns, the Virgil Brothers, anybody that was big there. We used to do all the floor shows at a place called Birdie's in Melbourne, which was a nightclub.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess Melbourne, I suppose, at that time in the late 60s, I mean, that must have been an incredibly sort of fertile place for rock and roll, with particularly like Cam Pact at the forefront of that late 60s psych movement. What are your memories of your time with Cam Pact? I mean, as time's shown, as far as musical creativity goes, both Keith Glass and Gulliver Smith were really ahead of their time.
Yeah, very much so. For Gulliver, I came at the tail end.
Okay.
At the tail end of it, so... But we were more or less changing its name to Company Caine. We were called the Cam Pact there for, I can't remember how long, but it was a fairly short period, and Keith had left, but there was still a couple of guys in there, and Gulliver was certainly in there. And then I can't remember it exactly. There was Jeremy Kellogg came along, the sax player, and Russell Smith and stuff. But yeah, there was a change because the manager of the band, David Flint, I think, from memory, owned the Thumpy Tum.
Okay,
which was a disco there where, and he used to manage the Cam Pact. So there was a few changes went on. I met Keith later in life. He had a record shop.
He sure did, yeah.
Yeah, and I worked for him for a little while in the record shop.
Okay.
I used to work in the record shop and the bookshop next door.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and I guess, did you record with Company Caine at all?
No, I didn't. We had all the songs together, but they actually, I forget the name of the drummer that was in the band after I left. Yeah, and I guess sadly, Gulliver Smith passed away last November. What are your memories of Gulliver? Of Gulliver, he was like he was a poet, he was a politician. He was a great singer. He was an actor. He was an incredible person. Very inspirational, in fact. You know, he's sort of a big thinker, thought out of the box. And when I met him, I was in my younger days. I remember Little Gulliver and the Children.
Okay.
Meeting him because I remember he had one of the first film clips up. You know, on TV when they were sort of first doing him in those very, very early days. You know, the Easy Beats days and. Like Billy Thornton, the Aztecs and stuff. So to actually work with him later was great. You know, he's just it's sort of rock and roll beatnik. You know?
I mean, you look back at that sort of period, and it's almost, you know, I guess you can't compare eras, but as far as creativity and I guess it was almost like a period where it's an embarrassment of riches as far as creative musicians go, and a concentration of that in certain times and certain eras.
Yeah.
And it's very sparse nowadays. You can't compare, I guess.
No. Well, I mean, Gulliver was a really prolific lyricist. You know, he was always thinking about whatever, like the news or something political or something really abstract, maybe sometimes. Yeah. But interesting and lovely man. Man.
Okay, so if we can just fill in a couple of the gaps here. You mentioned you're only in Company Caine briefly, and then you teamed up with Matt Taylor's band Genesis, which you then left to join up with Spectrum. Is that how that panned out?
Yeah, pretty much it. I mean, I did a lot of gigs in between to sort of fill in. Mm-hmm. I played with a band called Red House Roll Band. Mm-hmm. Sometime in my career, there was a thing for a guy, Bill. I'm trying to think of his name. He was one of the pub owners.
Okay.
He used to have a booking agency. He was a really nice man too. Mm-hmm. And but getting back to Company Caine into Genesis. Yeah. Genesis lasted about 2 tours.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was sort of much of a stunt drummer for most people in those days.
Yeah.
Did a lot of filling in gigs and a lot of sessions. I worked for Armstrongs and stuff, doing jingles, all sorts of things. Yeah. To keep the bread coming in,
I mean, very much in demand. It's the other thing nowadays is it's hard for a musician to sustain a livelihood nowadays.
Very much. I don't know how young people do it, because the money's the same as it was back then. And it doesn't go as far these days.
So I suppose in what is it, mid-70, you replaced Mark Kennedy, who'd left in Spectrum, who'd left to join King Harvest, and you stay with Spectrum until 73.
Yeah.
But you join after their massive #1 hit, I'll Be Gone. I guess a tune which has gone on to be an Australian classic. Unlike a lot of other Australian underground bands of that time, Spectrum did break through to have mainstream success. What was it like to be in a band that had commercial success and a #1 record?
Yeah, well, it was interesting for me because I'd come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And suddenly, I guess it had happened the same for the boys too, because Michael was in the Chance and stuff, and got Spectrum together. Yeah, it was interesting because Mark and I had been sort of friends before the Spectrum thing came up. We'd met on and off through drummers and through different people, through Sirius, Jackie Azarski and all that crew.
Okay.
When they came out. But, it was really interesting because the recording had already been done. So my first gig was the record launch.
Oh, okay.
Which was really interesting. That was my first performance. Had a quick rehearsal. I tried to replicate the stuff that Mark did as best I could, in line with the songs, but there's no way I could. I mean, he's an incredible drummer. There's no way I could do that. Jeez. I'd have to have 2 more arms and another leg to sort of do half the stuff he could do,
I mean, certainly a lot of that Spectrum stuff has certainly aged quite well. It's funny though. You look back at that period in Melbourne, say 70, 72. Some amazing bands on the circuit.
Yeah.
Always with Chain, Sons of the Vegetal Mother, Healing Force, the Aztecs, of course.
Yeah. Matter Lake. I mean.
Yeah, Matter Lake.
Yeah. Carson County Blues Band. I mean, they're a band that never got a rise,
Sure.
Oh, they did, because they did lots of gigs. I mean, they were really popular in that small sort of scene, or small happening scene it was. Everybody was really friendly and helping each other. I mean, used to play 3 gigs a night. Sometimes you do an hour set and you'd be in the car off to the next one, everybody using the same drum kit and all sorts of stuff, It was good stuff.
And I guess, Spectrum are not a household name nowadays as, say, the Masters or Easy Beats are, but people forget how big Spectrum were and how many great tunes Spectrum had. I mean, other than I'll Be Gone, tunes such as Super Body and Going Home, I often think that Mike Rudd and Bill Putt, who, again, like Gulliver is sadly no longer with us, deserve far greater recognition as songwriters for their contribution to Australian music than they've received.
Yeah. I guess it goes on record sales and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
And back then you didn't sell as many, so there wasn't as big a deal made of it as it is now, that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that really go unnoticed, for sure. I mean, for everyone that makes it, there's 1,000 out there that could have.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Look, let's cut to a tune, Ray. I want to play my favourite Spectrum tune, which is the Harder Rocking, But That's All Right, which has a great riff throughout. Do you have any memories of that tune?
I'd have to hear it, to tell the truth.
Okay.
Yeah. I know I've got the album here. Some fans, I've got some fans that sort of keep in touch over the years. Like they keep sending me albums. The last one I think was What's Up Your Nose. But I do remember. I know it rocks.
Those years with Spectrum must have been an incredible period of your life. And that tour you did with the Spectrum tour with Daddy Cool as part of the Aquarius tour, with both bands having had recent number ones, that must have been a heady time and a great tour.
Yeah.
What were your memories of playing with Daddy Cool on that tour, and also playing the first Sunbury in '72?
Well, great memories, because everyone was really friendly. I mean, we were all, as you say, sort of having a lot of success, and with that comes big audiences and exciting gigs. But I guess the memories was the friendships that I made on those tours with like Ross Hannaford and Gary Young and Ross. Getting to know Ross, which developed later on. I mean, those friendships obviously grew because I ended up playing with the guys.
I guess you mentioned the What's Up Your Nose album there. That also had some fine moments, didn't it? Pie in the Sky, Esmeralda, Indelible Shuffle. I mean, they still sound great today.
Yeah. And that was an area for me. One of the things that I learned with Spectrum was about songwriting and royalties. I'd never thought of that before. And then suddenly, geez, hang on a minute. You actually get money for writing songs as well as playing.
Well, I suppose that was, that business acumen, really, Ross Wilson was the forefront of that, wasn't he? Very much a forward thinker, breaking into America and whatnot.
Yeah.
So you participated in the 1984 Spectrum reunion. Did you participate in any other reunions?
No, just that one.
Okay.
And unfortunately, it didn't sort of finish as we'd have liked it.
Yeah.
It fell a bit short, and Michael decided to pull the pin on the last 4 weeks.
Okay.
And we ended up in Melbourne and stuff. But it was great to get back together, playing the songs.
Sure.
And I'm trying to think of the name of the young keyboard player we had, like Tony. He was a young guy from Adelaide.
Okay. Won't come to you. That's okay.
But he was a really nice young guy and a great piano player, and another great. He ended up working for Yamaha, selling equipment for Yamaha, and helped me out in the studio when I was working with George and Harry.
Okay.
It'll come to me these days. And when I hang up the phone later.
That's all right. What, looking back, and I know it's going back a while, what prompted you to leave Spectrum and join up with Ross Wilson and Hannaford in Mighty Kong?
I'd been with Spectrum for a long time. We'd done a lot of albums. Yep. I was writing more songs, and I guess in a nutshell, Ross Wilson made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Okay. Yeah.
He started working with Robbie Porter and stuff. And Daddy Cool had come to an end, and there was another guy called Steve Binder involved, and they just had a lot of success with Elvis's live show in Hawaii.
Okay.
So there was to me, I started sort of looking at it from the business side of it.
Yeah.
There were some big names, big money and stuff involved. And, it took me by surprise when Mighty Kong finished up, because the last time I saw Robbie Porter and Steve Binder, they were saying, pack your bags, we'll see you in LA in a fortnight. And all of a sudden, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, and again, there's another album which has stood the test of time, the Mighty Kong album, All I Want to Do Is Rock.
Yeah.
Jungle in My Blood, Hard Drugs Are Bad For You, Got My Beliefs. I mean, that is an album which is not just well, it's a testament again to Ross Wilson's brilliance as a songwriter, which, you know.
Yeah, very much so. Well, my partner and I, we were down at our local swimming pool, and one of these young gun drummers up here in Lismore, he's a great guy, Scotty, came up, and Laura introduced me to him, and the young guy said, that album with Mighty Kong, you know, it's a killer album sort of thing. So, and this is only but a few years ago, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. It's funny, you know, new generations discover old music, and
that's right.
Good. So, Ross Hannaford and Ross Wilson reformed Daddy Cool, and you reunite with your old Cam Pact mate Chris Stockley in the Dingoes. Let's talk briefly about your time with the Dingoes. So you joined the Dingoes in '75, and not long after, the band has negotiated a US management deal with Peter Budge, who was road manager for the Stones and Skinner.
Yeah, Peter Rudge.
Peter Rudge, rather, with a push to break the band into the US and Canada. Yet before the Canadian tour, you opt out to pursue a solo career.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate on your time with the Dingoes and your decision to pursue that solo career, mate?
Yeah, well, the Dingoes was a wonderful time. It was a great audience pleaser, you know. Like, we had such a fan base, and the band really, really rocked. I mean, like, I can remember nights there playing with John Dubois and Chris and Kieran and Broderick with the harp blasting, you know. My hair's on the back of my head standing up, you know, some of the gigs in the Carlton pubs.
Okay.
And they rocked and rocked and rocked. And we negotiated, we started doing demos to send over.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really unfortunate that the timing, the Lynyrd Skynyrd tour was all put in place. The plane went down.
Oh, okay. That's what's... All right, okay, yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Oh, this is my sort of recollection of it.
Yeah.
We were also going to be doing a gig over in Canada after doing the Lynyrd Skynyrd thing in Canada. We were going to be supporting the Stones, who were doing a little show before a tour. Because Peter Rudd's working with both those bands.
Yeah.
Was going to get us a connection. It appears after reading Keith Richards' book that he got busted in Canada.
Oh, okay.
And that put the clappers on that one. Okay. So the Dingoes were left in a position where, this is my interpretation again, where both tours were cancelled. And we there was a toss-up whether go and see what happens or stay, and my business head was going, Jesus, I think we need to stay and keep earning money here so that we're ready, and if gigs do come up, we're ready to play straight up, you know, like band ready and stuff. So it was more a business decision on my part, I think, and
okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's interesting. So I guess post the Dingoes, you've made that decision, and from what I've read in some old interviews, you were working in a music shop, you sell your drums, you buy a guitar and amp, you practice your singing again.
Yeah, that's what I did. I started writing songs. It got me back into writing songs.
Yeah.
And I sort of learned very early in the piece not to do music just for the money. Yeah. Because I used to get day jobs in between working with bands, so I never got soured of music. And so I worked in Allen's and met some really nice people. You know, I met Doc Neeson there. Used to come in and buy stuff. Malcolm and Angus used to pop in and get strings. Joe Camilleri would come and get sax reeds. I even Norman Gunson came in the shop one day.
Get a new harmonica?
Well, exactly. Yeah. Because he didn't know that I was a drummer from Spectrum or anything. You know, he just thought I was some cashier at Allen's Music. You know, so that was interesting. Fun time.
The best blues harp player in the South Coast. He used to call himself.
That's right. That's right.
So, 77, you form an R&B band called One Night Stand. You gig around Melbourne.
Yeah.
How long was this band gigging around before you decided to move to Sydney? And what prompted the relocation to Sydney?
I guess I started getting a batch of songs together, and I convinced a few guys to sort of come and play with me, and I used to make sure that I bought a lighting rig and bought a PA. I think it was, from memory, Jerry Lee Lewis had done a tour, and he left a custom PA here, and I bought it. use. It was a big old-fashioned thing, but shit, it sounded good. Pardon that, you'll have to edit that last part.
That's right.
It was a good thing. So I got a band together, a few guys, Randy Ballpen, and I can't remember the drummer. The drummer was Peter. There was Bruno, ended up in Kate Sobrano's band.
Okay.
Peter Laffey. Yeah, and I sort of doing a few gigs. Things were getting really good. Then Ross Wilson pinched my two guitar players to start Mondo Rock.
Okay.
And then that's what made me decide to take the song. So I jumped in the studio, paid a bit of bucks, and got a demo tape together. And decided to go to Sydney and shop around. And I went to at least a dozen record companies, and they're all sort of saying, nice, but. And, I ended up going to a pub on my way up King Street and bumped into Russell Dunlop, who I'd met through the years playing with different bands and working with different artists over the years. He was a good friend of Mark from the Spectrum days. Yeah, he said, what you doing up here? And I had this tape in my hand, and I said, I'm trying to sort of sell these songs and get a record deal. And he sort of said, oh, well, I'm just working up at Elvis Studio. I just come down for a quick charge, have a beer, and he said, give us your tape. I said, yeah, no worries. Not knowing that he was working with Vanda and Young. Not knowing that they were just upstairs, like 2 doors away. He came back and said, hey, George and Harry want to have a word to you. And I said, oh, yeah, fantastic. So we met, had a discussion. We had met before many years ago because Chelsea supported them once in Brisbane.
Okay,
way back then. But, we met, had a chat, and they said, I'll come back tomorrow and we'll have another chat. And the only other guy that showed any interest was Spencer Lee, who was like an independent guy. I think he worked with Supernaut. Yeah, so went back the next day, had a chat, and he said, both George and Harry said, well, we're interested, but we can't promise anything, we'll have a think about it and we'll get back to you. So I jumped on the plane, thank Russell very much for the introduction, and I headed off back to Melbourne. And they got the call, they said, look, we think we've got something, but we can't really commit. We think it needs a bit of work. And out of that, I moved up to Sydney and started to get a lot of work playing drums for them, which was really, really good. And in the downtime, they gave me a chance to sort of record.
Okay.
So in a period of about 18 months, I sort of took it back a couple of times saying, is this good? And they said, tweak this, tweak that. So all the time I was learning sort of recording skills and mixing skills and that sort of thing. Yeah, so I ended up doing my first solo album there with them and playing on a lot of good tracks with them as well.
And I guess if I can quote from Stuart Coupe from an article he wrote back at that period, he wrote, describing your band, the Rude Dude Sound, as, quote, an excellent, exciting, no-frills, soulful rock and roll band. And I think, you've just mentioned the recording sessions that became the Rude Dude's album, which was your 1979 debut. And I guess, that certainly, looking back, it did feature the cream of Australian hard rock players, didn't it,
Yeah.
Barnsey.
Yes, I was really lucky because there were a bunch of songs written over the space of 5 years or so. So it was all came together. And just, again, all my friends wanted to jump in and give me a hand when I requested them and said to George, how about this guy for that and this guy for that? They said, yeah, by all means, I'll do it, So it was one of those things, a lot of my friends that I'd worked with and sort of wanted to see me step up, I guess.
And the album certainly has that Albert's sound in the production value, but the songs are not just sort of tough hard rock. There's elements of soul and ballads too, with the brass aspect really the key to many of the tunes, I think. I mean, it must have been a tremendous compliment to you to have all these guys play on tunes you'd written and given you confidence as a songwriter as well. Yeah,
it certainly did. I mean, like the brass horn section, because Les Karski knew the guys from Graham Parker's Rumour.
Yeah.
And they were in town, and we went and saw them, and they had a day off. And said they'd come in, and it took them about an hour to do all those tracks. They just blown me away. That was a fun session. And
I guess other than, you had Barnsey and Ross Wilson, Pete Wells, Swanee, Harry, George, and also Angus. And I suppose the issue there is that Angus, from memory, other than recording with AC/DC and the Marcus Hook Roll Band, I'm not sure if he's ever recorded on anyone else's album other than AC/DC and your album.
Yeah. No, again, it was just one of those lucky things that Angus was in the studio that day, came in to say hi to everyone, and George said, "Yeah, have a go at this." Threw it at him, and again, another half hour, 5 minutes, first take.
Yeah, because I think I read a quote from you where you said Angus played 12-bar blues, but he just ripped it apart, played like a champion.
Yeah, he did. I don't think he knows how to play any other way.
No. So he played on the tune Rock and Roll Girl, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember when we used to go in and out of sessions, and the boys would be knocking up the demos and stuff, and Angus would be just up and down their neck practicing scales, and I'd never seen anybody so into guitar. Wild.
Mate, let's take a listen to that tune now, and of course it features the great Pig Morgan on keys.
Yeah, and the great Rockwell T. James on bass.
I guess top to bottom, there's some great tunes on Rude Dudes that still stack up today. Some Feelings, On the Run, The World Needs a Shake-Up, but my favourite tune is the more reflective Ambush, which is kind of a departure to the rest of the album.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great tune.
Yeah, don't know where that came from. The antennas just came out one night, and the way George and Harry too, like they're adding the sort of keyboard stuff underneath, made it very eerie. So it was more a production thing on their part than that. I just had a little guitar sort of line that I played, and we built it up from that.
Mm-hmm. If I can just I guess stay on that period of early '79 for you, that must have been an amazing period. With your not just your association with Alberts and Harry and George. It was certainly a very fruitful relationship for you, and you were certainly involved in a lot of projects. 79 January, and Atlantic Records send their vice president to Australia to check out the recording of AC/DC's soon-to-be album.
Yeah.
What would be the Highway to Hell album. Did you sit in on some of the early sessions for those recordings?
No, but what I did do, Phil was out of town, and I actually just banged around to show the record execs what the tracks the guys were knocking up.
Okay.
So it was me just sort of banging along with the roughs that they were playing for the guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some guide tracks.
Yeah. Well, not even a guide track. They may not have recorded. I think it was just like banging it out for the record executive guy. No, I wish. I wish.
Look, much has been made about Bond's last appearance in Australia, which was an impromptu set of half a dozen tunes at Cremorne Strata Inn with Malcolm, Bond, and George and yourself on drums. For those lucky enough to witness that must have been an incredible moment.
Oh, it was. Yeah, for me it was magic. When I say I wish, I did get my wish did come. I did actually get a swing with the lads, because I'd known Malcolm and Angus a long time, and Bond, for years, from fraternity and all that sort of thing. So we'd always remain friends with you there. But it was a great night, really impromptu. And a friend of mine, I think a photo of it's just appeared in some book somewhere. And, This friend of mine, John O'Rourke, who was around in the studio, who took some studio photos, emailed my partner one for me. And if you look in the top right-hand corner, there's my little head on the drums of the shot at the Strata.
Yeah. Nice. Look, in Murray Inglehart's book Maximum Rock and Roll, you mentioned the night when yourself, Malcolm, George and Angus head to a club in Sydney's George Street for your Bucks night, but you were all refused entry for looking, quote, too rough and ready.
Yeah.
Yet they were playing AC/DC on the disco.
Yeah, no,
it's a funny story.
That was a fun night. There was a long-time friend of ours. It was a friend of Bond's and mine way back, called Greg Johnston.
Yeah.
And he'd arranged for a Chinese meal at this restaurant that he knew really well, and we sort of ate there and then wandered out and thought, let's go for a club and have a drink. Anyway, we're standing outside, and I can't remember the song, but the guys are pumping, And we sort of walked up to go in, and they said, "No, sorry guys, you dressed a bit rough there," because we just, denim jacket, pair of jeans, and everybody was a bit ritzy there in town. Yeah. And we all chuckled at ourselves and went on our merry way.
Yeah, it's a good story. So look, I mean, Albert's, there's been, I guess, renewed interest in Albert's. There's been that recent documentary and whatnot. It's been well documented that they had, a hell of a roster in its label, particularly in the hard rock stakes, with Rose Tattoo and AC/DC, TMG, the Angels, JPY, Stevie Wright. I mean, looking back on your career, your timing was incredible, Ray, wasn't it? You went from working with so many of Melbourne's greats, Ross Wilson and late 60s period, Mike Rudd and whatnot. Moving to Sydney, you found yourself as part of that Albert's family, and then you were seemingly the go-to guy as far as drummers were concerned with so many of those artists on the Albert's label.
Yeah, I think you did it. You said one word, timing. Yeah, and I think that's what everybody used to say to me. Your time is really good. You keep good time. And I guess I was having that early years with picking up sessions in my Spectrum days and stuff like that. I learned what people wanted. What they wanted was what they wanted to hear. Okay. So I used to go in and didn't play any fills. Yeah. And they could say, "Could you put a fill there? Do you mind doing that there?" And I realized then if I wanted to be a session musician, you had to be directed. So that made it easy for me. I wasn't out to be a drummer. I just wanted to be in a band. Okay. You know what I mean? That difference between me and Mark Kennedy. Mark practiced a lot and had lots of technique and stuff, where I just sat down and grooved to my favourite records.
Okay, look, and I think your time, I want to touch upon your time with just Cheetah a little bit, another Albert's band. You played on their Rock and Roll Women album, didn't you?
Yeah.
Did you tour Europe with them and play at the Reading Festival in '82?
Nah, didn't actually tour. We both were in Europe at the same time doing promotional stuff, and they actually got up and did a few gigs, and timing just didn't work out. Okay. I ended up heading off to Spain to do some promotional stuff there, because we were just, Albert's are really good, if there's a spark, they'll blow it and get a fire going, and if it starts a fire, they'll get there. It's very, very move where the action is, If food, unbelievable coming to be with Elvis. I learned an awful lot working with Vanda and Young and stuff with Ted, and just a lot, I mean, if I'd have got out of the starting blocks, I certainly had all the right trainers.
That's a nice analogy. I like it. So, early 80s, you're fronting the Ray Arnott group. You're penning tunes that would ultimately appear on your 1985 album, Rock and Roll. And again, on that album, there's many standout tunes all written by you. This in my opinion, is a way underappreciated album with great rockers like It's a Monkey, Little Wheel, Flaming Heart, Grinding Blues of Shake That Thing, or Lonely Night, Freight Train. My favourite tune on that album is Slow Dance, which was the second single. Yeah. That's almost has a Stones-like kind of Miss You kind of vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess because it's an R&B sort of album. Yeah. And we were looking for a pop song. I came up with the best I could, Flaming Heart was about that. And if you look at the credits for the songs, it was written by a guy called L.K. Hole. Which was a Vanda and Young pseudonym. Okay. AL.K.HALL, which is, put it together and it sounds like alcohol. Okay. So it was a collaboration. Yeah. And you got to put it where it's due, because it's a great song.
Oh, it is.
And it is exactly what you said. It had that little pop thing. George and Harry gave me a chance to have a different sort of thing. It was wonderful for me, again, because it helped my songwriting again. But, I lucked out. I just couldn't get one that they would thought was a good hitter, We had a couple up our sleeve, because, as you said, any one of those tracks that you mentioned before, was a good rocking song. But, looking for the single, always looking for the good single. And, for me, to have a song written, and the boys put a pseudonym on it and still held me a bit of cred,
Sure, okay.
But you've got to give credit where it's due.
Yeah. That album got an overseas release, did it? USA and Sweden.
Yeah. It was big for me because when it was released in the States, it was released on Atlantic, and it came on the old-fashioned Atlantic label, the red and green label.
Yeah.
So I got an American copy here because it's classic. Because I always wanted to, I had dreams like everybody, but like the Stones were on it, Otis Redding was on it, all these people that I really loved, all the old blues acts were on Atlantic. So I was stoked.
Okay. So, 83, Ray, you replaced Steve Prestwich in Chisel. How did that come about? As I thought that Gary Young from Daddy Cool was in the frame to replace Prestwich.
Yeah, Gary had done things before. I'd been hooked up. I'd done a few things with them before on different occasions, about 3 from memory. And Gary may have been hooked up in something else, and they wanted to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
So I was given a call and said, yeah, Jeff, I'll give it a run. No worries. So we sat down, talked business, and started doing some shows, and out of that came the 20th Century album.
That's amazing. Look, what are your standout memories of your time with Chisel?
Great musicians, great players. Obviously, some sort of, because Steve had gone, I mean, I don't know any of the politics or incidents or whatever happened to them, their relationships or anything. But it was hard trying to fill a spot that had been there for so long.
Sure.
It had such a big impact on the band. Because he was a prolific songwriter himself, Steve, and a great drummer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for me, it was a real honour. The guys are real gentlemen. And then, as I said, great musicians. And it also brought together another relationship that I'd had for a long time, because I'd known Jim for a long, long time.
Sure.
He was a young man in his teens through his brother John. I just, one of the outstanding songs is I guess I really like Janelle. And Saturday Night's a big one. When I hear that, the centre of that, I just think of the... I got the key to the city. It really bangs out. I just think Phil Spector just came straight to my head in that section.
Yeah, one of Christine Amplett's favourite tunes. Did you know that?
Is that right?
Yeah.
One of Christine Amplett's favourite tunes. Well, God bless her.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess you mentioned your connection there with both both Barnsey and Swanee. So you went on, I guess, famously to record his first 2 solo albums, Body Swerve and For the Working Class Man.
Yeah.
Any memories of those recordings that stand out for you?
Yeah. It was really good to get back with Chris. It was exciting because Jim was doing something that he really was had a lot of enthusiasm, and he really wanted to make it work. And like myself, doing my solo thing, Jim was there sort of in my second row. And again, I felt, a privilege and a dedication and I guess the will to want to make it work for him. But again, wonderful again working with Mark Opitz, who I'd worked with before with Vanda and Young. And we got a skills acquisition in the same areas at the same times, Which again, as you said, I produced my second album. George and Harry gave me the reins to a degree on that, It's really good.
When Ray did rock and roll start to take a bit of a back seat for you, and you start to think about doing other things, because you ultimately moved into teaching, is that correct?
Yeah, in a fashion, I actually went into retirement for a little bit, and then the other stuff seemed to happen. I mean, there were a lot of things going. I moved to Coffs Harbour. I had a little place in Coffs Harbour whilst I was in the Jimmy Barnes thing.
Okay.
And I used to commute from Coffs Harbour down and stuff like that. And Jim had really gotten into his Canadian management, the Bryan Adams crew. They started to take in, and they were having more of a impact. Jim was spending less time in Australia and a little more overseas, so that was starting to pan out. And an opportunity to do other things. And I guess there was a bigger gap than I thought, and I got really settled on my farm.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I waited for a call and it didn't come, so I got on with other things.
I mean, and nowadays you're involved in a number of Indigenous arts and musical projects. Can you elaborate on that somewhat?
Yeah, well, after finishing up with gym and having that break, I decided I wanted to do something with music again. So I started volunteering at the local youth centre.
Okay.
And giving free music lessons on a Friday night. And there were a lot of young Aboriginal children, and they couldn't believe it. And great drummers.
Mm-hmm.
Aboriginal kids can play drums, man. Far out can they play drums. Yeah, so got connected in that sort of thing. And through that, a youth worker had noticed that I had an ability to sort of connect with young people.
Nice.
And offered me a chance to sort of do some social work, if you like. And I really enjoyed it, and sort of realised that that there's so many young people out there that needed a bit of guidance. And I remember when I was young, up in Brisbane, I used to go to the PCYC, and this old copper sort of helped me out once, and I thought, gee, this might be something for me to carry on, because I didn't want to play in bands and stuff. I'd had a great career, and my wife and I at the time, we wanted a baby, came along, a little daughter, Ellen, who's a beautiful young woman now. So there's a big life change for me, and I started to prioritise other things other than music.
Okay.
And the youth work sort of became a way for me to earn money and fulfill other things. And as it turns out, I met a lot of Aboriginal elders looking after some of their children in and out of different situations, and picked up a lot of art skills. And my current partner and I haven't done them for a while because we're doing a lot more local, but we used to go to the desert to do art and music programs in the school holidays.
Okay.
To assist with the substance abuse and stuff that happens in those downtimes.
Yeah.
And realised that we could do that in the community that we live in here. So we came back, and my partner's a really incredible singer and a really prolific songwriter.
That's Laura Noble, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Laura Nobel.
Laura Nobel, I pardon. Also has a couple of albums out worthwhile checking out.
Yeah, very much so.
People can find those on CD now, is it? I believe. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
little plug there, Ray. Always
well,
good.
There you go. If you're looking for a plug, there are two, and there's the Let Me In album I actually worked on and played drums on it. It's a ripper. It's up with the best albums I've ever played.
Oh, nice.
On.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you still?
Too.
Okay. Are you still playing and songwriting?
Yeah, I do a lot of. I don't do much playing. I play when Laura plays.
Yeah.
I'll do the odd gig with her. We do sort of community-based gigs usually.
Okay.
If we can, and as I said, I don't sort of play very often. I just do things with Laura. In most recent times, we've done a couple of albums with a Cabbage Tree Island school.
Nice.
Local kids writing the songs with Laura, doing all their own lyrics, and I do a lot of stuff. I have a little workstation, if you like, and every time I hear a new song, my current thing that I'm trying to replicate is I'm hitting up on songs like the new Daniel Johns album, Talk.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I've got all these machines, and I pull all these sounds. So I've got a bucket load of backtracks, but not too many vocals.
Okay.
But that's my hobby is to go into the studio and sort of. I can replicate that sound, and off I go and do a track. But keeping my hand in.
Nice. So, in your role, I guess as a teacher, you're involved in teaching and have been for a long time. Do any of the kids or their parents recognise your past and come up with a copy of Miles Ago or Rude Dudes to be signed? On occasion. No? On occasion. It happens, okay.
Yeah. I have a lovely family that attend the school that I work with now, Aboriginal family, and these young children. I play clapsticks for the dance group.
Oh, okay.
And their dad's a dancer and didge player. Anyway, he asked for an autograph, So I photocopied a big A3 size 20th Century album cover and signed it up for him. So I get the odd one still.
Okay, very good. Mate, we've touched upon a lot of your career today, and I think I've skipped over certain bands. We talked about the Southtown Moods in 64 with Glen Wheatley. We looked at the Browns with Ronnie Peel, but we didn't mention too much about Flash in the Pan, JPY, Chris Turner. We covered backing Stevie at 2SM's Rocktober, but so many sessions you've played on, including Rick Springfield's Mission Magic LP in 74. Yeah. Dutch Tildas, JP White, mate. There's so much of your history, Ray, which unfortunately we're not going to have time to cover today. Yeah. And look, so many great stories. You've been an integral part to so many Australian tunes over such a long period. Is there a book in there, Ray, about your life in rock and roll?
Yeah, I've been asked, and but I don't think so. I'm a man of a few words. I think the book would be a small book. It'd be a small book. But your interview may encourage me.
Okay, so there might be a book one day.
Yeah, you never know.
There's certainly interest there. And look, in all the decades you've been involved in rock and roll, is there a band that you thought should have made it big or had more success than they did?
I guess two artists that come to mind, and one would be Wendy Saddington.
Okay, yeah.
I saw her when she came back from America there, and it would have been in the early 70s. And she came back, and she was just something else, but nobody noticed it. You know, she was like Björk almost.
Okay,
but,
yeah.
You know, a show. And I think it just was over the heads of the audience. And the other one would be Swanee, you know, John Swan.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You know, you sort of...
Yeah.
Man, that guy can sing, you know, fantastic musician and a wonderful human being. Yeah. So, yeah, that I mean, and I could go on. I mean, the scores of people, sure. As you just said, you know, that don't get acknowledged for what they do.
But mate, you've made an incredible contribution to rock and roll over many years, and people like me and a lot of people who follow our show still continue to listen to the great music that you've made. So I want to thank you for that. And I think you've got a great body of work that we've touched upon a lot of it today for people to go out there and discover.
Yeah, no, thank you for your acknowledgement, and I really appreciate it. You know, you've made me reflect on a lot of good memories.
I'm glad. Yeah. You know, we do try and do our research and make it interesting.
Yeah, well, you certainly got me thinking, and I stand corrected on that Southtown Moods thing.
That's okay. And look, lastly, mate, every guest on the show gets to select an Australian song that has meaning for them. It could be one of yours or a song by an Australian band. Is there something that you'd like to choose? Yeah,
well, you mentioned Chrissy Amford, and the song that I have written down on a piece of paper in front of me is a Divinyl song, I Ain't Gonna Eat Out My Heart Anymore, which is a cover.
That's right.
But it's a fantastic song, and the fact that she thinks that one of the songs I played on is a good song, that's where I'd like to go.
Look, that's a great way to close.
Yeah.
Ray, thanks for your time today, mate. We'll go out with the Divinyls.
Thank you very much. All the best, eh?
For Ray Arnott, the Divinyls there with I Ain't Gonna Eat Out My Heart Anymore, a tune, of course, originally recorded by the Young Rascals. It's been both a pleasure and privilege to have Ray on today's show, and I hope that this interview has reminded you just how significant Ray's contribution to Australian rock and roll has been. Let's get out of here. AustralianRockShow@gmail.com. Give us a thumbs up on Facebook. Visit our website at AustralianRockShow.com. All the past episodes are there for you to enjoy. You can hear the Australian Rock Show on Stitcher, TuneIn, and also subscribe via iTunes. Once again, if you're listening in via iTunes, show your support by leaving us a review. It improves our ranking and helps others to find us. Let's close today's show with the song It's a Monkey, the first track from the Ray Arnott Group's 1984 album Rock and Roll. Thanks for listening, folks. This is Dennis. Out.